What if I told you that most transitional housing providers are leaving thousands on the table every single month because they don't understand how Medicaid really works? You've got the vision, you got the property, you got the people, but the funding, it's a mystery. Welcome to Live for Free, where we teach purpose-driven leaders how to create transitional housing programs and transform the lives of others. And today, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on Medicaid billing. We're going to unpack the truth about Medicaid. We're going to look at what it covers, look at what it doesn't cover, how you can fully tap into one of the most overlooked streams of support to stabilize your program and scale your impact. So let's dive right in. Now, I hear this question all the time. People ask me, Tony, can you bill Medicaid for transitional housing? You might have your housing already placed, you have a vision, and you're wondering, is this something that I can tap into? Because everyone's talking about it. How can I be a part of that? Well, I can just say, before I can tell you that, I need to first tell you what Medicaid is and who pays for it. Medicaid is a government health insurance program for low-income individuals, and it pays for things like doctor visits, hospital stays, you've got mental health services, you've got therapy, you've got medication. It provides for all of those items. But listen, it is funded by the government, and each state runs it in their own way. They have their own version of the program. So it means that Medicaid may work differently in your state where it might work in a certain way in my state. And that's what you need to keep in mind. Just because someone says they do Medicaid billing and you think you can replicate their program, you better know what your state requires. And this is what I will say. It only pays for the things that are considered medically necessary. So if you have someone who's in your program who is in need of therapy, Medicaid might be able to pay for that. But if you just need a place to stay, that is not considered a medical need. It's simply housing. So now that you know that it cannot pay for housing, not only does it not pay for housing, it doesn't pay for room, and it doesn't pay for board. So those of you who have programs that are just based off of rent, room, and board, Medicaid's not going to pay for that. You will have to have something other than that Medicaid would cover. The things I mentioned earlier, those are the type of things you're looking for. So you might have an amazing transitional home that you got set up. It's going to give somebody a bed, give them a meal, a safe place to heal. I'm going to say that is powerful. You want to continue doing that. And it is necessary, but it does not mean that Medicaid is going to pay for it because it's not a medical service. So no, you cannot submit a bill to Medicaid saying $600 for rent and expect a check, because it's just not going to work that way. So what can Medicaid pay for? And as you think about that, the main things that it will cover is if you've got a person in your home who's dealing with depression, someone who might be dealing with PTSD or a disability or some type of substance use disorder. Those are things that a person in your home, Medicaid would pay for. But you have to be able to, when you offer that type of support to someone, it has to be provided by a licensed professional or somebody that has been approved to provide it. Medicaid can only pay that licensed person for those services. So as you think about specifically a person with those medical conditions, the services that you also can bill for are things like case management, therapy or mental health counseling, any type of counseling. You could even have it pay for peer support, which those are people with lived experience helping others. It will pay for that. It will pay for substance use treatment. It would also pay for life skills coaching, but that is state specific. So you will need to know if that's something that's applicable in your state. But again, these services have to be medically justified, documented, and provided by someone who is allowed to do Medicaid billing. So it just can't be a random person doing that. You have to go through the process to do that. Now, there is this thing that's wonderful called a medical waiver, a Medicaid waiver. Now, what I love about the Medicaid waiver is and this is also something that is in certain states. Not every state has a Medicaid waiver, so you'll want to look in your state to see if you have any. But this is a waiver that allows for the state to waive certain Medicaid rules so they can pay for more community-based services like those needed by people with disabilities, people with mental illness, or some type of chronic condition. And when you have that, that's like the difference basically. So if you're charging, let's say, $2,000 or $2,500 a person, and they only have 15, it would make up the difference. So being able to have a Medicaid waiver is critical for you to be able to utilize in your state. So find out if that is something available in your state, and as you're looking for it, you might be able to look it up as like 1915C waiver, or a demonstration waiver, or some type of home and community-based services waiver. All of those names is the same thing as a Medicaid waiver. So I would just encourage you to look that up and make sure you understand. But these are critical items that you'll need to know that will help you fund your transitional housing program. Also, Medicaid may allow to pay for things like moving into housing. Sometimes they do that, as well as any type of health coordination that you have to do. They sometimes pay for behavioral support plans, as well as even temporarily staying somewhere else during a crisis. And those are things that you want to make sure you're fully aware of what Medicaid pays for in your state. Now, once you know that what services your Medicaid will pay for, those are the type of things you'll go after. But I want to tell you, make sure you understand it does not pay for shelter. It pays for services. The shelter, you cannot have items in there specifically around room and board, rent, things like that. It has to be from services that are offered, and your state should be able to dictate that. So how do you get paid from this? Because people want to know, well, how can I do this? I see that it's done. Now, how can I make it happen in my transitional home? But before we go there, if you've not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and do the notifications. I'm going to be doing a wave of videos over the next few weeks. I don't want you to miss it, so be sure to subscribe and get the notifications. But there are 3 options that you should consider if this is a space that you want to add to as one of your funding sources. And this is one of my favorite ones, is that you partner with somebody who does the Medicaid. They are actually an approved Medicaid provider. And I love that because you're providing the housing, they're then providing the services. And if you can create a way for you guys to have this relationship through an MOU, then you can be able to get a portion of that from that Medicaid approved provider, and you're helping them, they're helping you. That to me is the best option in most cases, because you want to be able to fully give services to the people who are staying in your program, and they are one of the best places that you can get that done. You get automatic funding from that. Just make sure you have a solid MOU so that you can be able to move forward with that. Now, I will say that whenever they actually bill for the Medicaid, you will then get your portion as they deliver the services on site. So it's a win-win. Another option is that you can become the provider. Now, I'm just going to say this takes time. I know when I got mine, it took forever to get things lined up, and maybe like 2 months, I think, for us to do it here. It's different in every state, but you truly have to have your licenses together, all of your credentials. You have to be fully approved, and that does take time. So all your documentation, everything that you're going to do must be solid. That is an option. But the third option is to do some type of blend funding. And I like blended funding because you'll get the best of all worlds. You get to have somebody who's coming and doing the Medicaid billing. You can then use some private grants. You can get donations. You could even get a government contract, but by having blended funding along with your partnership with somebody doing Medicaid, you truly have everything covered as far as your funding sources. And you've got funding you can count on every month. What you don't want to have happen when you're creating a transitional housing program is to lose one of your legs for funding. Because when you lose that, you have nowhere else to go, and you have to cover those costs regardless of how many people you have in the property. You need to make sure that that cost is covered. So I want to encourage you, as you are getting into this space, make sure that you know your state's rules. This is critical, because if you don't know how things operate in your area, you will mess up. This is where most people mess up, is in understanding what the state does require. And you do not want to set up a program that will eventually be shut down because you are doing things that you should not be doing. And Medicaid is different from state to state, because just because you can do something in California or New York does not mean you can do it in Texas or Missouri. And I've seen a lot of people get into this space and they'll hear something from someone and they're immediately moving down that path. That will get you in trouble. So be sure that you understand what the state laws are that they require of you, and that will allow you to be successful. Now, one of the things I like to tell my mentees all the time, as you are learning these rules, make sure you meet up with your Medicaid office, the person in your state Medicaid office. They're the best resource. They're going to teach you what you need to know. If you had questions about something you read, write down a list of questions and talk to them. That is the best way to position yourself so that you're not stuck, not understanding what's going on. And then most importantly, I love partnership. I encourage my mentees all the time to partner with other people, at least until, if this is something you choose that you want to add later and you maybe want to provide yourself, you have learned a little bit under someone else as they provided the services. Just be careful as you're creating that MOU with someone, because you want to make sure you're protecting yourself as well as the person's going to make sure they're protecting themselves. So make sure you're protecting yourself, okay? And last but not least, as you are creating this and creating this opportunity, make sure that you do not put your mission at risk. That's why I tell people all the time, make sure everything you've done has been successfully thought through and incorporated, because those are the type of things that can jeopardize what you're building. And once you get a ding on your brand, even as it relates to your mission and your brand, those are things that stay with you, and we want to make sure we set you up properly. So in my final thoughts, to answer the original question, can you bill Medicaid in your transitional housing program? No, you cannot. You cannot bill Medicaid for housing alone. But what you can do is you may be able to bill for supportive services inside the transitional home as you partner with someone else. So think about how you would potentially partner with someone and move yourself through this program successfully. So it's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. And as you move down this path, I want to encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about this and other topics as a purpose-driven leader, join my community, tonyschool.com. That's TONISKOOL.com. When you join my community, not only are you learning how to be a transitional housing provider, but you're with other purpose-driven leaders who are interested in partnership and interested in working together. And we do that in our community, all for a little small fee. Plus, I've got all my courses there, so you're welcome to see what's available to you that meets your needs. So go out here and change the world as it relates to helping someone else who's vulnerable. And as you change your life, you'll be transforming the lives of others. See you then.